lot of changes happened with time and the object for which the internal audit was conducted. At times, it is a limited review. At times, it is only about testing of the controls, the review of the controls. So it all depends on the scope of the internal audit. Before we start this session, let's understand and ask yourself these questions. Why you all are here? There are certain questions. If the answer for this is affirmative, then yes, you should attend this session till the end, where we will be sharing a lot of insight on how to write an effective audit report. Were all your findings or recommendations different from last time this area was reviewed? It is a general practice to take up the last report, find out what was the observation, we start from there and then continue. So how many times you are reporting the same observation, what was there in the last audit report? Do your reports focus on the future rather than the past? Have you ever wondered what, of course, when it comes to management, when it comes to the audit committee, they look forward for the value addition. What we are doing in this audit. Problems are there, they are duly identified, reported. The work of the internal auditor is not over there. We need to give a value add on focusing on the solutions to the problem. So is the report only identifies and reports the problem or focuses on the future actions as well? Have more than 90% of your audit recommendations during the last year been fully and successfully implemented? Did the findings, conclusions, and recommendations really represent the key issues? Was the audit opinion a true reflection of overall conclusion? Were all your recommendations 100% practical? Every questions what I asked you to think about has a deep understanding behind it. You need to focus on each and every area and find yourself, where are you lacking? Are you not giving any practical recommendation, or you are failing to give an overall picture of what was your audit findings? Let's understand and discuss these. First and the foremost important aspect of an audit report is clear and a concise communication. What has been told not necessarily is understood in the similar manner. There are a lot of miscommunication happen because of the language which has been used. So there is a very good saying, to effectively communicate, we must realize that we are all different in the way we perceive the world and use this understanding as a guide to our communication with others. So what I understood, am I really conveying it rightly to the relevant stakeholders or not? Audit report, it is used by multiple people. There are different stakeholders for the internal audit report. And everyone has a different perspective and a different view of, different objective of viewing that report. Who all are the stakeholders? Stakeholders are right from the process owner to the HOD, CFO, audit committee, statutory auditor, regulator, or the investors. Everyone is interested in the audit report which you are sharing as an internal auditor. it is important to understand that every stakeholder has a different perspective, different thought process of using the audit report. Everyone looks for the relevant stuff from their perspective. What is that? Expectations of different users, the process owner. Process owner tries to understand the process. He focuses on the genuine observations, listen to their point of view, practical suggestions or recommendations, and the cost-effective solutions. The process owner has a limited perspective from their own processes only. Then it comes to the HOD, CFO, CEO, CO, or MD, or you can say overall the management perspective. There, they need to assess the overall risk assessment. They try to understand how you have assessed the risk in the report and accordingly shared your value addition based on your recommendation. What was the analysis? Were you able to identify the relevant causes? The findings were correct. And what was the response of the process owner, whether they have agreed on what you have find out? And what was who is the responsible person for the implementation? They have altogether a different perspective of viewing the audit report. Then when it comes to the audit committee again wants a bird's eye view of what has been suggested. A good and a right audit report, effective audit report, shares the overall coverage along with the materiality level for the audit committee. What is material, what is relevant for their perspective, what is should be prioritized and getting noticed at the first place. It is important for them. Next is the statutory non-compliances, if there is any. The summary of the key issues of the findings. Preventive and automated controls. What has been done, what has been recommended for implementing those observations, those findings. What was the management comments and the action plan with a due date, with a target date of its implementation. It is really important for them to have a time frame for implementing the corrective actions. And they also focuses on the comments for the improvements and the value additions, which the internal auditor is suggesting through their reports. Statutory auditor, they look for an overall coverage. They have a limited perspective. They have, since they're required to report in CARO that the internal audit has been done and is commensurate with the size and nature of the business, so is the internal controls. So statutory auditor's perspective of looking at the internal audit report is a little different. They focuses more on what were the issues, what were the non-compliances, specifically statutory non-compliances, then what was the assurance level, and what is the comfort they are getting, which help them making their final report and save their time in making their start audit done. So based on the different expectations, the idea is that as an internal auditor, we need to keep a focus on the expectation of various stakeholders. We should focus on what is expected from the internal auditor and how we can cater to them. Different form of communication for different stakeholders, starting from the base, the process owners. They usually discuss the queries during the audit and give their comments on the draft internal audit report before it reaches to the next level. And they're also focused on the detailed annexures, as in the evidences of your observations. Whatever observations you're making as an internal auditor, process owners focuses on the evidence as well. Then coming to the next level, the HODs, they focus on the observation at the exit meeting and the prima facie replies of the process owners to ensure that if there is any observation, they can implement it at the right time. The focus of the CFO, CEOs, MD, or the audit committee, they focuses on the dashboard presentation, executive summary, and the final internal audit report. Generally, when it is in a draft form, it is discussed with the process owners or the HODs. But when it comes to audit committee, they expect a crisp and concise format for the audit report in a short, minimum possible words, which conveys the full meaning. A plain, simple language is good enough. It is not necessary that you need to have an elaborated long report, which the internal auditors use to prepare a long form audit reports. The longest, the better. So that concept with time has gone away. People don't have time. There is always a cost and time benefit analysis. So to save the time, they hired the internal auditors. So their expectation is that they should get a quick view of what has been observed in the audit during the internal audit. The statutory auditors, they focuses on the detailed audit report with annexures, which provide them assistance in finalizing their own report and ensuring that the internal audit was conducted properly, because they need to report as per the CARO. So everyone looks for a different part of the communication, different part of the, and at different stages as well. We need to understand that while we are communicating with them, while we are talking to the respective stakeholders, their objective is different and their expectations are different. That is why the way we are communicating is also a little different. So what everybody likes to see, as in different stakeholders, the value added process, fraud risk, and the compliances. These are the three major areas where the stakeholders expect a response from the internal auditors. Although internal auditors are not there to find out the frauds, it is their responsibility to raise the red flags only and intimate the management about what is happening in the organization. So adding processes would be on the revenue, if there is any leakage in the revenue side, or the cost or savings, how they can reduce the cost, how they can improvise on the savings. Efficiency improvement in terms of their rework, complaints, rejection, returns, inspections, discounts, etc., etc. If there is any efficiency, if there is a possibility of improving, they look forward for such kind of suggestions. Supply chain, procurement, benchmarking, analytics, or dashboard reporting. A complete overview of what you have done throughout the period of the audit. Fraud risk. What would be the scenarios, fraud scenarios, any adjustments, related party transactions, any exceptions which has been Done. New transactions or new regions or products or any whistleblowing events, or if there is a control deficiency which is ongoing despite reporting. So these could be the fraud related risk which stakeholders want to see. From the compliance perspective, of course, independent review of the compliances, what has been done by the organization, what was the history, compliance history and assessment, the complete tracking and monitoring of the compliances, and board certifications. So when it comes to these areas, as in when we are talking about these aspects, it is the onus of the internal auditor to meet the expectation of the respective shareholder and provide what the stakeholders want to see in the report. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, said George Bernard Shaw. He rightly said that it is just an illusion that what we have communicated has been done the way we thought about it, which is not the case every time. We need to ensure that what we are communicating is communicated the way we are thinking we are able to communicate it in the right manner. So, have you thought of these questions? What readers do and don't value in your written reports? There are a lot of things which is kept in the report for the sake of keeping it. Why? You know, when I used to go on audit and when it is a new assignment, they say, okay, fine, we are reporting this. Why? Because it was there in the last report. No, this is not the case. Now things have changed. There is a lot of evaluation which had happened. There is a difference between information and communication. That is what we really need to understand. Audit report is a mean of communication, not just an information document. So it is important for the internal auditor to understand what readers actually value in their reports. How you can make it easy for readers to understand and accept your key points. It is very crucial for an internal auditor to make the other people accept what the key points you are making in your internal audit report. Of course, we understand the concept of materiality. We understand the concepts of different concepts of reporting, how we need to plan, what has to be done in the respective manner. Apart from all these things, it is really important how you are making a point to make it acceptable for the reader to understand and accept what the point you're making. Why recipients don't always grasp the significance of the issues you present. It is not necessary that whatever you think is important is conveyed in the same way. For you, there may be something which is extremely significant, but if you fail to present it in the same manner to ensure that it looks significant, then that is where the effectiveness of your audit report goes away. Next, how word choice can affect the reader's response to your report. I have seen a lot of reports where they use certain words like "we found," "it was there's nothing which you have found. It is already there. You just have to come to the point and use the right language. You haven't discovered anything. Then another word which is commonly used, that the management failed to do so and so thing. They have not failed. Yes, there is always a gap, but using the strong language makes it, if you are not using the right perspective, using a negative assurance or the negative words or its very strong objectives, that reduces the effectiveness of the key points. Because if you're using everything like that, then you will not be able to really raise the right points. So how the word chooses by the reader affects the audit report is very important. The concept of the 5 C's in internal audit reporting is not new. I'm sure many of you have already seen this and following it. Criteria, condition, cause, consequence, and corrective actions. The 5 C's. Criteria, what it should be. As in, while you are making any observation or you're reporting any issue, you should answer these questions before taking it to the audit report. So what is the standard that was not met? The standard may be a company policy or maybe any other benchmarking, which is followed regularly by the company. So the criteria, it has to be very, very clear and should be reported precisely the way it should be. So for example, if there is an exception which is happening, a company has made purchases of say 300 crores. Out of that, 45 crores is without any approval. So yes, there is a gap which requires reporting, and of course, materiality is also there. So the standard is to ensure that the approval has to be there. If it is not there, then yes, you need to report. Condition, the current state. So what is the particular problem identified? What if the approvals has not been done? What had happened? Is the rate inflated or not? If it is on the equal rate, then it's okay. Or maybe the quality of the product has decreased. Even if the rate has not been inflated in the books, but a cheaper or a low quality product has been purchased at the same rate, which was without approval. So you need to understand that what was the particular problem which has been identified. Next, the cause, the reason for the difference. You need to go a little into deep. Why did the problem occur? Why the approvals could not be obtained on time? Might be due to non-availability of the people, or it could be a malicious intention. You need to discover and find out what was the real cause behind it. And it is not the cause which has been told to you. Consequence, the effect. What was the effect of that deviation? What is the risk or the negative outcome or opportunity forgone because of the finding? So what was the risk and the negative outcome? So continuing the same example, if the approvals were not taken, what was the risk? It could be a fraud. That can be the reason. Or if there is whatever has been purchased at maybe a higher rate, or with the same rate at a lower quality, a cheaper quality, then it may hamper the further sales. Either if it is purchased at a higher rate, then the profit of the company has declined. And even if it is purchased at the same price, but the quality has reduced, in that case, sales returns may increase. The quality of the work, which is expected, and of course, it will lead to a hit in the goodwill of the company. If the sales return increases, if the quality of the product which has been sold ultimately has been compromised. So what are the corrective actions? The plans and the recommendations. So what should management do about this finding? What have they agreed to do and by when? It is really important not to leave only at the identification of the problem. Long back, when the internal audit was not considered as, it was just a requirement because of the car rule introduced long back, where the importance of the internal audit was not understood by the organization. The role of the internal auditor was restricted to the finding of the problems. Now, the expectations is that the internal auditor should also give a solution. They will not only come with the problems, they should give a value addition, they should give a solution to the problems. So just remember these 5 C's while you are reporting any observation which you have made during the audit. Coming to the next topic of different sections of the audit report. What ideally should be the different sections in the audit report? First of all, the executive summary, the whole summary of what has been there, which is backed up with the evidences, attachment, annexures, details. A executive summary is a must to highlight those areas. And of course, it helps the audit committee to find out what are the priority areas. So the audit report starts with the introduction, finding, conclusion, and finally the recommendations. In every section, the layout of the audit report would be something like this, where it has a cover page which talks about what type of audit you are doing. So is it only the review of the controls or a compliance audit or detailed internal audit? The type of audit should be mentioned on the cover page, along with the name of the organization, the period covered, date of submission of the report, and who is submitting the report. The cover page should clearly spell out this information. Table of content, why it is important? Of course, the audit report which an auditor presents is usually longer because it has long annexures, it has long details, as in evidences what they have found to back up their observation. Because if you are reporting or making the audit report perfectly, then it helps as a defensive tool for the internal auditor. Your observations reported rightly works as a defensive tool for the internal auditor whenever it was required. The table of content, it identifies the topic and the page numbers. It reports the whole sections, different annexures or the attachment to the report. Executive summary, it gives a brief overview, overall conclusion, recommendation. It's basically a bird's eye view where you can find out what is there in rest of the pages. Purpose, scope, and methodology. So information, give proper information about the audit, as in who has conducted the audit, what areas was covered, the scope, etc., etc. It should be given briefly. Why audit was done, whether it is requested by the department or law, or it is as per the audit plan. So all these things should be reported as should be part of your internal audit report. Next is how it was done. What was the audit objective, the methodology which you have followed, and the scope of the audit. These three things should be clearly spelled out in the beginning. Next important section of the audit report is the audit observations. Audit observation, give a background of what had happened, a brief background, the description of the issue noted, what was the cause, and of course the effect, recommendation, and what is the comment of the process owner or the respective department. Audit observation should cover all these aspects. Effectively, if you see that audit observation covers all the 5 C's which we just talked about. And then it is followed by the annexures, attachments, or appendices, whatever name you give it, a detailed supporting of all the observations. What is really important, now coming to the specific tips for writing an effective internal audit report. Use the plain language as much as possible. This avoids ambiguity in the mind of the reader as well. If you're using a simple plain language, it helps the reader to understand it quickly and then implement what has been communicated. Avoid jargons. Don't use too much of jargons or sayings in it that may lead to confusion. However, you can definitely use the technical terms, which is a part of that industry and is commonly used in that organization, which actually those jargons which you can, or the technical terms you can use, which can be easily understandable by the stakeholders or the users of the audit report. Be specific. Just don't state that there is a problem. Explain the problem in detail and follow the 3C criteria. Give a complete detail of the problem. Ensure that it is not just the problem which has been done. What are the consequences, corrective actions? Everything should be duly reported in the audit report. Use visuals to improve readability. If you use tables, charts, or the graphs, that will help giving a quick overview. So going back to the same example where I talk about the approvals which were lacking, out of the 300 crores, 45 crores were without approvals, right? So if I present it in a simple plain words, it might not be that effective if I really mean to convey it in that manner. If I present it in a graphical presentation, that catches the attraction of the user. So it is important to use the right visuals. Don't overdo that, but yes, it should contain the information in the best effective manner. and it should be visually appealing to the reader, where they can just see and look at it, what is being asked for. Next, tailor the report to the specific audience. Consider the need and interest of your audience while writing the audit report. It is really important to understand and see who is going to use this audit report and for what purpose, what information they really need to know, and at their level, what is appropriate to be reported. So if you go to the audit committee and start talking about the irrelevant stuff, they'll throw you out of the boardroom. They need specific information. They need only those information which requires their attention. Get feedback from stakeholders. So once you have drafted the report, before finalizing, take a feedback, incorporate that, ensure that it should be a very clear, concise, and effective. Incorporating the feedback of the stakeholders makes the audit report more effective. So that gives a dual perspective, what has been reported by the auditor and what is the management perspective. Using these tips, I'm sure you'll make the audit report much, much better. So while using these, the language in the audit report, whatever you are using, avoid using certain words. What are those? Failed. Like the management has failed to communicate, or management has failed to do this or that, whatever. That is not the right way of communicating appropriately the things which you want to convey. Avoid using the term failed, inadequate, found, ineffective, appears. These are the adjectives which confuses the user or the reader of the report to get the right idea of what you want to convey. Just try and avoid these words in the audit report. What are the best practices? State the, so I'm talking about the best practices from the presentation perspective. Then we will see the best practices from the overall perspective. So from the presentation perspective, state the critical issues first. Normally, whatever is more important should be reported first. Highly critical, critical with a medium, then a low level of risk. So report the highly critical issues first. Next, illustrate the risk. So if anything had happened, what is the risk behind? That needs to be reported clearly. So if you have reported that, yes, there is a decrease in the revenue, for example, it should quantify that loss. How much is the decrease? Emphasize potential for the improvement. What are the areas which can be potentially improved? See, when it comes to the management, they just don't look only for the corrective action. They look for preventive actions as well. So focus on both the improvements, graphical representations. It is really important to present your data in maybe a bar chart, pie chart, or the way whatever looks more appealing and gives a fast or a better overview of the position. Just don't report it without numbers. Like usually people use the word in many cases, how many cases, or in few cases, how many cases, how few it is. So to understand, give the right perspective. Tabular representation, identify the best way to group and distribute that data logically into the tabular format. It helps you in putting the complex data in the relevant format to ensure that it conveys the right meaning. So these are the best practices which the internal auditors should follow while preparing their report, or maybe the dashboards which they are presenting to the audit committee or the management. You know, long back, of course, initially we used to write the audit report in Word format. Now it has significantly changed, and now it is moved to PowerPoints. So people have started preparing PowerPoint, and it is always a little more interactive PPTs, which is being presented to the board. So work on it, adopt those practices to ensure that your audit reports are more effective. And the overall best practices I'm talking about is the positive assurance. Positive assurance means that just don't only give the reports by exception only. Give a balanced report. Tell them what has been done, what is positive in it, what is working properly, include that part as well, and then give the exceptions. That is more effective, and people like to read more about it. That is how the perception of the management or the organization has changed about the internal auditors, that they're not just reporting what the problems, but what is being working right till then. Follow the 5 C's, and definitely it helps you defending your observations. Your audit report has to be correct, clear, concise, comprehensive, and complete in all respect. You should ensure that you follow all these practices to make the audit report more effective. Corrective actions. So work with the process owners to include the corrective and the preventive actions. As I told you, that people just don't want to listen about what are the corrective actions. They talk about the preventive actions also, because our report should not be focused only on the past, but it should focus on the future events as well. If there is anything which had happened, for now, of course, you can correct it. You can take a measure to correct that. But what is your recommendation in terms of preventing it in future also? Keep it short, focused on areas that matter. As an internal auditor, we are very much used to writing a lot. For us, longer the report, longer the attention. This is not the case anymore. We should keep the reports very, very short. Last but not the least is the faster reports. When I talk about faster report, understand that when you are delaying your report, it loses its value. Time is the essence. Issue the report as soon as possible so that the actions which you are asking them to take, that should be implemented quickly. If anything, if there is a big gap between the two, then of course, the value of your audit report is definitely reduced. That is how you can make sure that 90% of your observations has been accepted and implemented. Let's see what are the do's and don'ts of the report writing. Factually accurate. It is really important that you should ensure that whatever you are reporting should be factually accurate. Check language, grammar, spelling, punctuations, and the style. All are important. Use of the active passive voice, use of gender neutral language, it's all important. Consider the importance of the report, as in to whom you are presenting, how they will use it, what exactly they expect, and what they want out of it. It is really important to communicate that and ensure that it has been duly conveyed through your audit report. Observe the principle of brevity, clarity, readability, and consistency. Be consistent in your report throughout. See, all these areas, of course, we just have a very short 1 hour session on this. Every area which I'm talking, I can talk for hours on this. When you come to be it grammar, spelling, punctuation, everything. There are a lot of minute things which we miss. We need to ensure that it should be duly taken care to ensure the right communication. Importance, decide on what is more important, what is relevant, what is irrelevant, communicate what is important and relevant. Visual presentation, of course, it is the necessity. Use bullet point instead of using the full paragraph, bigger paragraph. Try to have a smaller sentences, maybe say 10 words a sentence. 7 to 12 is a appropriate length of a sentence, 7 to 10 words. Try and use that as much as you can. Use the CRISP principle, keep it short and simple. It is really important to keep it really short. Don't just go by the length. Your fees is not decided by that. How much is the length of your audit report? It simply puts a burden on you on whatever you are writing if it has not been duly communicated. Conciseness, omit any information or phrase which is not absolutely necessary. Do not use too much of adverbs or adjectives, because that actually dilutes the conciseness of the report. Clarity and consistency, whatever you are thinking, your opinion, it should be same throughout. It has to be same throughout. Keep it short, keep it simple, make it clear and consistent without ambiguity. The flow of the report, everything is very, very important. When it comes to headings, ensure that you make a proper heading and subheadings wherever necessary. It catches the attention of the user. If you're not doing that, start doing this. It will definitely grasp more attention. Correct formatting. I have seen a lot of content which goes here and there. In a Word file, use justify to make it look uniform. If it when we get a document which looks cleaner, it is easier and more interesting to read. Audit report is something which nobody wants to read because it's boring unless you make it interesting. Avoid repetition and unnecessary words. Most important thing, review your report. Try to get it reviewed by someone else before you actually issue it. It helps you in giving a different perspectives. What happens is when we keep on working on one thing, we keep on thinking in the same manner, the language which we are using, everything runs in our head and it just jumble up. We are not able to put it on the piece of paper the way we are thinking about it. When somebody else is reviewing it, before issuing it finally, it gives a different perspective. That is very much required. Coming to the last slide, what are the don'ts for this audit report writing? Be gender neutral. Don't write he or she, and even don't use the name of the people. Instead, use the designations. Avoid superlatives, unsupported words of finding. If you are not having any supporting document or an evidence, don't be in a hurry to report it. Using colloquial language, for example, use perform instead of does, requires instead of needs, etc. Jargons, avoid it as much as you can because it does not really add value, but increases the confusion. Unconventional words, as I already told you before, keep it simple. Don't make it very, very tough. Specifically, while we are talking to people and the people who are using it in India, English is not our first language. So keep it simple. You may be very knowledgeable, but it is not required that you need to put everything in your audit report. Overstuffing of sentences, that just keeps your report lengthy. Paraphrasing those sentences, putting too much of ideas, it is of no use. Negative language, avoid as much as you can. And don't use judgmental sentences while writing the report. It actually loses the value. The observation which you have given, it comes from your perspective. It may look like that it is your perspective, not the fact. So ensure that whatever you are reporting, whatever you are writing in the report, it should not look your judgment. Give it in your observation or separately, or your recommendations, but don't use the judgmental sentences. Thank you so much, everyone. Now I'll take up all the questions which are there in the chat box. The usual way is to write the report in past tense, but if the process does not exist, it should be written in present. Absolutely, yes. Use of the past tense should be avoided. As I told you earlier, that the report has to be futuristic and should be in a, should not be in a past tense. Many times auditees expect to elaborate on the positive affirmation comments. Absolutely, we have already covered this, that people talk about the positive assurance instead of the negative one. Why internal auditors' recommendation should be practical? It is really important to ensure that whatever you are suggesting can be implemented. Otherwise, nobody needs your advice. So it is really, really important to ensure that your recommendation should be practical. How can report be futuristic? Of course, that is where you can suggest certain actions for the future. It is important to have the right actions for future as well. Yes, the best practice is recommending practical and doable actions from auditee, even from their perspective in general. When we talk to auditees, they also give us options, that because at times they feel that if they are giving any suggestion, it is not being taken to the next level. What are the alternate appropriate words to be used instead of found, failed, which you mentioned not to be used? Keep it simple instead of putting all these languages, as in the word found or so failed, as in simply state the condition without assigning any blame. Who has failed, what had been, as in you are not there to fix that who is the culprit. So if you have found something, we find things because they are there. We are there to audit. That's what we are supposed to do. To say that we found something, shift the emphasis to us, and it also carries a superior tone that draws attention to the auditor and not the problem at hand and corrective action required. Keep the language simple. There is no problem. You can use the simple language. There are a lot of repetitive questions which I can see. As a part of the audit, we do simple verification of transaction or control checks. Then while presenting the graphical representation, do we need to project the actuals or do we need to extrapolate the loss or observation? See, while presenting, you can always do a contrast between what is there on actual and what could be based on your recommendation. So both the things can work well. Just talking about the futuristic thing won't help. You need to give the actual position simultaneously. In few circumstances, we need to give a lengthy literature to explain the audit point. Does this not divert the core focus of the audience? So if there is something which is a very detailed one and may not be required by everyone, you can shift it as a part of the attachment or the annexures of the report. You can definitely share the basic observation and refer it for the details in the annexure. I'll be sharing this presentation with all of you. If it is contradictory observation in the perspective of different stakeholder, like some statutory violation, shall we hide it in the report for some stakeholder, but report to some other? No, it is not the case. You need to keep it open for all. It is not necessary that you need to hide it. It is really important to ensure that, see, you are not there to hide anything or to support a limited number of people. So it is really very important. So there are few hand raises. I just allow you to talk.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, where can I get this presentation, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be sharing this presentation with Chanchal. He will be sharing it in turn with all of you.
Okay, via email ID, on the email, right?
Yeah, of course, on the
Thank you,
registered email ID.
Thank you.
Hi, Narayan here.
Yes, please.
So my Yes,
So your voice is not clear.
are you able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so my quick question is, while keeping that balance between how I agree with you, you need to keep the report short and straight. But there are points in time when you need to detail out your findings, right? The process owner needs to understand what was checked as being balance. You prepare two different reports, one for management, one for or how do you do that?
Your voice is completely breaking. I can't hear you properly. It is breaking in between.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, but
Oh, sorry. Okay.
yes.
Okay, so my question, I'll just keep it short now. How do you strike a balance between giving a concise report to management and more detailed process owners?
See, the detailed version can always be shared with the process owner through the draft report, and with the management, you can keep it short, ensure that the executive summary which you're sharing is crisp and concise.
Okay, are you saying that then you will have two sets of reports like a deck, a summary or a presentation to the outcome, and then you have complete whatever 200 pages, 150 pages report?
Yes.
Sometimes the audit committee member does ask, he wants a drill down or he wants to go into details. So how do you do that?
Of course, you can share the complete report with them and present a brief deck of the report to the management.
Requesting everyone to share the feedback. It is mandatory for getting the CPR's credit. So I have received a few feedback only. So requesting everyone to share your feedback. The link has shared on chat box.
Yeah, thanks.
Welcome.
Okay. Hello, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have only one question regarding the heading of the observation. Like, suppose if there is an observation regarding the under provision, so should I write the heading as a short provision of amounting this pertaining to this particular area, or should I write in a defensive way like controls around creation of provision needs to be strengthened? So this is the dilemma: what to write, exact observation, or it should be around the process.
See, when it is the observation, you can always make it very clear and to the point instead of just beating about the bush. So it is, you can always write that there is a short provision and there is no harm in doing that. But when it comes to the improvement or the suggestions, then there you can have a decent language for the future actions.
But from my what I see, like we are internal auditors, we are not hitting the transaction, so it is not ideal to write on the process because the process is not working correctly. That's why we have identified this particular short provision instead of mentioning that particular transaction as a heading.
See, when it is the process is lacking, then of course you need to talk about the process first, and then as a outcome or as a effect, what we mentioned, just follow the 3 C's. That you need to of course say that while the control is not effective, the effect is that there is a short provision.
Okay, and another quick question: is there any ideal scenario, means any ideal report writing format, whether it should be in active or passive, or we should use both, like you shown in your presentation?
Yes, so it is really important to have a direct language, as an active is always preferred, and use the same voice throughout, same style throughout the report. That is
Thank you so
generally
much.
being followed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Yes,
Yeah.
do all the observations have to be quantified?
Ravi, I can't hear you.
Do all the observations will be quantified, ma'am?
Your voice is breaking. Rupal, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I have two quick questions. Firstly, adding on to Narayanan's point that means we are giving the short reports or executive summary to the management, but initially to keep our reports short, if we are including all the 5 C's, so what I have seen or what I've observed is we are unable to make a short report if we are including all the 5 C's in it, because somehow it just gets longer. So, is there any balance or anything that we can maintain so as to maintain the short report at the first end itself? And then, of course, we can have executive summary, 1 page summary for our top management.
See, if you are trying to use the simple language and see, you just need to work on the language. Everything can be conveyed in whatever I can convey in one line can be conveyed in one paragraph as well. So work on how you are writing the report. It's all about the language which you are using. I understand that there are a lot of points which you need to make along with it. It is important that way, but at the same time, using the appropriate language also helps a lot.
Yeah, and thanks. And secondly, I just wanted to ask the alternatives that we can use for the 5 words that is mentioned in the presentation, and you've explained well, like inadequate or failed. So often we use these words, and means these words are quite common for me to use in the reports. And as you have mentioned that these are not appropriate. So what we can use or how we can direct the
See,
conversation?
why we really need to use this word? We can simply, instead of fixing the blame or putting anything as a condition, there's no point in writing those words. Try find a alternate language. Just state the simple conditions. What has been there?
Okay.
Can I just add to what Rupal asked?
Yes, please.
So her question is also very similar to what I. How do you strike that balance between keeping it brief as well as keeping it? So what has helped me, Rupal, is we use a lot of also spoke on it. We also use a lot of metrics or some kind of scoring system so that you present charts and some visuals to the people, and then allow them to ask a drill down question. We also respond by saying that for example, if we say that say we noted 25 controls in the HR and payroll, and then we assess that say 20 of them are working and 5 of them are improved. So I put that in a chart. Permit within quotes. I mean, we sort of trigger the outcome guy to seek questions on what those 5 were if he wanted, and then we go into the detailed report. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, thanks, Narayanan.
Thank you so much, everyone, for for joining us and staying till end. Hope all your queries, etc., has been duly cleared. Yes, Ravi, please.
Ma'am, do all the observations have been modified?
Unable to hear you. Your voice is breaking again and again.
Am I audible?
You are not.
Then
Yeah, you can chat, sir. You can type your message. Thank you. Thanks, ma'am, for the wonderful session. So can we close it out?
Sure. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today's session. You will all get the PPT via email on your registered email ID. Thank you.